that down much better that way, and your recording device will work much better if only one person attends.
Indeed, I agree.
Right. Now, the other thing that we didn't get into, Mr. Lyons, and I don't know if you're interested in this, and I don't want to go back through our whole debate we already had, but here's what I do, and I think you might have seen this earlier. Anytime someone comes in with charges that are pending, and there are 2 charges pending, it appears. You're charged with driving with a suspended license. There is also a charge of use or possession of drug paraphernalia. Each of these is a Class 2 misdemeanor, punishable by a maximum of up to a $500 fine, and the state's waiving any jail time, so that's not applicable today. Now, these are the driving with a suspended license, and I think you may have seen me give a sentence that's what they call a scheduled or bondable offense.
Okay.
The fine and costs on that would be $272.50. Whether you're found guilty or would plead guilty, that's what the court would impose. Now, the use or possession of drug paraphernalia is not necessarily a scheduled matter that I've seen on a regular basis, but it could be punishable by something of a similar nature. And usually what I ask Mr. Davies, and it's kind of up to him if he wants to make any offer to you in the form of a plea agreement. Sometimes the state may say if you plead to one, they'll dismiss the other. I don't know if that's an offer he wants to make, but I'll ask him first. Mr. Davies, is that something you would like to do that might resolve this matter today?
If there's a plea to driving under suspension, we'll dismiss the paraphernalia.
And so, Mr. Lyons, you don't have to do that, but they're offering, if you wanted to enter a plea.
Can I counter?
Well, there's only 2 charges. And if you wanted to have a discussion with him separately outside of my presence, because I don't get involved in the plea discussions, but when you're not represented by counsel, I usually ask in the fashion I'm doing.
Okay.
So what he said is if you wanted to plead to that driving with suspended, they would dismiss the other charge. You wouldn't have to plead guilty because the court could accept a no contest plea, which means you're not fighting it. Now, when you said could you counter, I don't know if you meant you would rather plead to the other charge and have this one dismissed.
No, give him my offer.
Okay. Do you have a proposal that you want?
I do.
Okay.
My proposal is that we dismiss this case post haste and we drop the whole thing, and I won't have to continue on in federal court case law with you guys and take you up to get you sued there for malicious prosecution. Because I've already stated my constitutional rights, and I stated them to your officer as well.
I understand.
And those are well-established laws. So your qualified immunity does not apply.
And that's your opinion.
And the opinion of the court.
Well, not necessarily of this court.
The Supreme Court, which is just a little bit above you.
It would be. Now, the proposal that they made, I take it as something you're not interested in.
Are you interested in mine? I mean, we should drop this case right now.
No.
Okay, so they've rejected that.
Okay.
And are you interested in what they have indicated?
No, hell no.
Okay, then that's fine. Is the state prepared with its first witness?
We are, Your Honor.
State can call its first witness.
State will call Tori Gordon.
Ms. Gordon, if you please come forward. If you please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear the evidence you're about to give relative to the matter now in hearing should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please be seated.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
You may.
Would you state your name and address, your name, please, for the record?
Tori Gordon,
And on February 28th of 2020, your occupation?
state trooper with the South Dakota Highway Patrol.
Were you on duty on that date?
I was.
In uniform?
Yes.
Marked patrol car?
Yes.
Working in Hanson County?
Yes.
At that time, had you been certified by the state of South Dakota as a law enforcement officer?
Yes.
I don't seem to have one, but I'll ask you, did you prepare any kind of report on this case?
No.
Okay. We won't go to that part. On the 28th of February of 2020, did you have occasion to have contact with Joshua L. Lyons
I did.
in Hanson County?
Yes.
Had you ever seen the gentleman before?
No.
After the contact with him, have you ever seen him since prior to today?
No.
Where did this contact take place? Which county?
Hanson County.
On what highway?
I-90, Interstate 90.
And what happened that led to your having contact with this individual?
I observed a vehicle that I later identified as his vehicle traveling 85 miles per hour and also following a vehicle too closely. I initiated a traffic stop at that point.
Did the vehicle in fact stop?
Yes.
How many occupants did it have?
One human occupant.
Okay. Did you at some point identify the driver?
I did.
How was that done?
He had an ID or driver's license on him.
When you initiated the stop, what did you do next?
I approached the vehicle and I told the driver the reason for the stop and asked for his identification.
Did he respond to that request?
He did respond.
And that response was what?
He didn't want to give me his identification.
So what did you do?
I explained to him that I needed his identification to complete, though I told him that I was going to be writing him a warning for the violations. And I told him that I needed to identify him to complete the warning
The warning was for the speed.
for both the speed and for following too closely.
Okay. Did you in fact ultimately wind up issuing those citations?
I did not for those violations. I did issue citations for other violations throughout my contact with him.
Did you issue a warning for those violations?
For which violations?
Following too close in speed?
I did.
Okay. What happened after you told or informed him that you needed that information?
He was adamant that he didn't have to give it to me and that he wasn't going to give it to me. At that point, I called for backup to assist me just in case, there was any other incident at all.
All right, and the backup you called was whom? Or who arrived?
Weston Fisher,
Okay.
Trooper Fisher, and there was a game warden, but I can't remember what his name is.
All right. Did your conversation with Mr. Lyons continue?
Yes, after I waited for backup to arrive.
All right. This went on for some time, attempting to get the information from him.
Yes.
About how long, do you remember?
I don't. I just remember it being longer than what it normally would be to write a warning.
Like maybe about 28 or 9 minutes?
That could be.
Ultimately, did Mr. Lyons provide the information that you had asked for?
Yes.
And did that information then identify the driver as Joshua L. Lyons?
Yes.
Is the person you observed out driving or in that vehicle on the interstate on that day, at that time and place, present in the courtroom today?
Yes.
Would you point to him, please, and describe what he's wearing sufficient to show on the record?
White t-shirt, and he has shorts on. I can't see what color they are from here, but
Thank you.
Green.
Your Honor, for the purpose of this proceeding, I'd like the record to reflect the witness has in fact identified the defendant.
The record will so reflect.
After you got the identifying information, then what did you do?
I did ask him to step out of his vehicle, as I do for every stop.
Did he?
He was reluctant. Usually I ask for people to come back to my vehicle, but he didn't want to do that, which is okay. But I did ask that he step out of his vehicle, which he did do,
Ultimately or right away?
ultimately.
Okay. Continued your conversation, issued the 2 citations. What information did you obtain that led to you issuing a citation for driving with a suspended license?
So I had returned my patrol vehicle to conduct the rest of my warning, and part of that is running driver's license to make sure that it's valid. And that's when I discovered that it was suspended.
All right. You found that through the information system available to you as a highway patrolman?
Yes.
Had you used that system to determine status of driver's licenses prior to this date?
Yes.
Had they received correct information from the system on those earlier occasions?
Yes.
And did you have anything happen through the course of your inquiry into Mr. Lyons' license that would lead you to believe the information you received that day was incorrect?
So, and this was a while ago, but I believe that there was some question about the reason that it was suspended. It's something to do with insurance, I think.
All right, but was there any question about whether it was suspended or not?
No.
Through the course of your investigation and work with this stop, you also wound up issuing a citation for drug paraphernalia?
Yes.
Can you tell us what happened with that or how you came across it?
So I had made a passenger side approach, and he opened his glove compartment to get some of the stuff that I was asking for, and I could see paraphernalia in there at that time.
What paraphernalia did you see?
I can't remember. I just remember seeing the paraphernalia. I don't have a report for this.
Okay. So after going through the process and issuing the citation, then what did you do?
So because of the paraphernalia that was in the vehicle, a search of the vehicle was conducted.
All right. Did you come across anything else of note through the course of that search?
Yes, there was other paraphernalia in the vehicle.
Such as?
I know that there were pipes in there, and specifically to what there was, I can't testify to that, but I do know that there were pipes in there. I can't say if there were grinders or anything like for sure right now as I stand here.
How long have you been working for the Highway Patrol as of the 28th of February?
Approximately 3 years.
Okay. Had you made other stops related to contraband and illegal or controlled substances prior to this stop?
Yes.
Had you dealt with those controlled substances on earlier stops?
Yes.
Had you come across, dealt with, and become familiar with drug paraphernalia through the course of those earlier stops?
Yes.
And through the course of your training?
Yes.
Okay. So you have no doubt that what you saw, the pipes were for marijuana or some other illegal or controlled substance?
Correct.
Through the course of the search, anything else of note that showed up?
There was a handgun, but it was after looking at it and examining it, it didn't seem to be operational and it was out of his reach.
Okay. After completing the search, what did you do?
So after completing the search, I ultimately issued a citation for the paraphernalia and for the suspended driver's license.
Okay.
And I issued warnings for the other 2 violations I talked about earlier.
Prior to the stop, you saw Mr. Lyons operating the motor vehicle.
Correct. Yes.
He was the only person in the car.
Yes.
Where was he seated when you first approached the car?
In the driver's seat.
No further questions for this witness, Your Honor.
The court has a couple of follow-up questions, and then I'll give Mr. Lyons an opportunity to ask questions. Then later, if you want, you can testify.
Okay.
But it would be questions first. But I have a couple of follow-up questions. First, Trooper, the information you received on his suspended license status, what state did that come from and what information did you receive?
To my recollection, I believe it was out of Colorado. And it said it was suspended, and then upon investigating that a little further, I believe it was suspended for insurance reasons.
But it came back as suspended. You testified earlier there was some question as to how it was suspended.
Correct.
Okay. And then you talked about locating items of paraphernalia, and Mr. Davies offered some questions concerning that. But the items you located that you believe to have been paraphernalia, what illegal substance do you believe they may have been used for as paraphernalia?
Marijuana.
And what led you to that conclusion?
So, burnt marijuana residue. All these items were seized as evidence. So for specific, like what exactly they were, where they were found and everything, I would have to refer to that.
But your earlier testimony was that there were several pipes located in the vehicle?
Yes.
And are those the items you're referring to that you thought had burnt marijuana residue?
Yes.
I just wanted to clarify what you were talking about. All right. Mr. Lyons, if you wish to ask questions of Trooper Gordon, you can do so at this time. Just form it in a question, and then she will need to answer that.
Okay. Can you tell me, can you describe the location where you were sitting when you saw me going too fast?
I was on Interstate 90 in Hanson County.
Left side, right side, center, where?
Crossover.
Okay. And what's the angle of deflection? What was the angle of deflection?
I object to the question in its current form, Your Honor. It doesn't refer to angle of deflection for what?
What was the angle of deflection and your radar reading?
I don't know what angle of deflection what you're talking about.
You're not aware that when you're using a radar gun, that when you're off to the side, that you have to compensate for the angle of deflection in order to receive a right speed, because when you're at an angle, it doesn't give a proper return. You're not aware of this?
Okay, I think what you're asking is what my position was in the crossover.
Yep. Did you figure out the angle of deflection?
Can you explain in response to his question where your vehicle was located, which direction it was pointing in regards to his vehicle? That would first set up an answer perhaps to his question.
Okay. I was,
No. I apologize, Your Honor, but I object. That is not what my intention. There is a specific degree of angle that you're supposed to figure out so you can compensate for the 1 or 2 miles per hour faster that you're going to get a return because there's a deflection. You're supposed to figure that.
Deflection?
I'm sorry, repeat that.
You were sitting dead center in the middle of the road when you radared me.
Okay, so there isn't a deflection per se. If I'm sitting in the crossover and I have my front stationary radar in an opposite direction.
Okay, and let's go back then. How were you sitting in the what did you call it?
In the crossover.
How were you sitting in the crossover?
Okay, I was in the crossover facing to the west. So if I was running my radar stationary in the opposite direction mode, I would be running speed from cars traveling to the east.
So you and another car were not sitting this way on the highway?
I wasn't facing north or south. I was.
You weren't
facing
sitting
west.
with anybody either? Were you sitting with anybody, other officers on the highway?
No.
No? Okay. So that still takes me back to the angle of deflection. Did you compensate for the angle of deflection? Because if you're sitting in the center of the road, there's an angle. Not if you're aiming right at me. To get a proper reading on a radar, you have to be aiming right in front of a person, and the object has to be coming toward you. Were you sitting there?
All right, I understand his question.
She's saying 85, and if I get 2 on that, and then I got 2 on her not doing the tune, then we're at 80 miles an hour, which I state clearly on my video that's what I was doing in cruise control.
And let's slow down a second, Mr. Lyons.
Okay.
I understand your question, but you're asking a question about whether she's sideways, north or south. I believe, but we'll ask her to clarify, she said she was facing east and west. Trooper, would that be correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, where was the front of the vehicle?
The front of my vehicle was facing to the west.
To the west. Okay. Were you all right next to the shoulder, or were you way over in the center of it?
I wasn't. Okay, so for reading a radar gun or detector, you don't just take in the number into account. There's other things that take into account.
Okay.
Like tracking.
Okay.
And what that means is, so you get a reading, and by looking at speeds of other vehicles, it's not just the one reading that's a determinant of all.
Okay, can you describe the vehicles that were around me at the time then?
No, I can't. Not right now. I cannot.
Did you mark it in a report? Do you have a report? I heard you did not have a report. That's what I heard before. Is there any report on this?
Do I have a report prepared? No.
Do you have any evidence besides your testimony?
Video.
Okay. And that shows everything, the tracking and everything.
The video is only for the stop itself.
Okay. But that shows everything that happened, right?
For what?
For the whole stop, from the time you turn your lights on to the end of it.
Yeah.
Okay. It does?
That would be a question that you would need to ask the
Did
state's
you
attorney
familiarize
who's reviewed
yourself
the
with
video.
this, the video? Did you familiarize yourself with this video for today?
No.
No? Wouldn't it have been pertinent to do this?
Is that a question about the case or,
I mean, yeah, sure. You're trying to put my life and my money on the line. Don't you think you should have got the facts straight?
I'd object to the line of questioning, Your Honor, as relating to an item that's not even in evidence.
It's
At this point, I think she indicated she didn't review the video.
okay. Then is there a report that you can refer to clarify all of these things? The vehicles around me, the tracking history. Is there any of that stuff? Does anybody have that?
I object to that question. It's already been asked and answered.
Well, the objection's overruled, but I want you to clarify. Trooper, is there any written report?
I do not have a written report.
Okay.
Okay. Is it your position that you are qualified to make a legal conclusion out on the road?
I object. That's a misstatement of the record.
How so?
I think it's overruled at this point. Let's at this point stick to factual questions.
This is a factual question, sir. Because you are granted a certain authority, do you feel that you are qualified to come to a legal conclusion? Is that a better question?
In reference to whether there's been a violation of the law,
No, a crime.
a crime, okay? Because can I add that to the end of your question?
Sure.
Okay. So do you feel qualified to come to a legal conclusion as to whether a crime was committed?
Yes.
And what makes you qualified to do that?
My training as a law enforcement officer.
Okay. What does the Constitution do?
I'd object. That's irrelevant.
That's,
How is it irrelevant? Why do you guys keep saying that the Constitution is irrelevant?
the objection is sustained at this point. We're not dealing with constitutional issues.
I am trying to prove that this witness is not qualified to even be an American citizen. I'll prove it right here.
And that would be an irrelevant line of questioning.
If she's not qualified to be an American citizen, she's not qualified to make a legal conclusion.
That is irrelevant, and we're not going to go down that line of questioning, sir.
Okay, so what I'm getting here, what I'm starting to understand here is that she has no evidence, and we're going to continue this case. She's committed perjury already once, so...
Sir, I don't believe anything's come forward that she has committed perjury. Her testimony
her testimony is going to prove it.
Just wait.
Okay.
Her testimony has been of the facts as she recalls them about this incident. She has testified that she...
And the facts are seriously lacking in this case, sir.
I have to make that determination.
Okay, but the worry in my case is that this guy, his offer was for me to plea to something I didn't even do.
And you were not required to do that. That was an option, and you did not want to do that.
But if he would have done the paraphernalia charge, I might have thought about that. But he asked for a suspended license, which I didn't ever do. Like my license was good. At the time, it was bad because of some paperwork malfunctions, and I explained this to these officers.
Okay, sir, I'll give you a chance to testify.
I'm not trying to testify. I'm trying to understand the nature and the cost, because he offered a deal. If I don't do a bench trial with you, then I can avoid jail time, which seems a little shady to me. Like,
well, sir, in efforts to exercise judicial economy and resolve the matter today, he was willing to waive a request for any jail time if we could hold a hearing and get it resolved today, because they had their witness available and wanted to proceed.
And in prudence to the judge's time and the court's time, I offered that you just dismiss it. So who's got that one?
Well, first, he's the authority as the.
I understand, but we're authoritating on her word and her word alone. She doesn't have anything else backing it up.
But that can be sufficient to obtain a conviction.
That is ridiculous. That is no evidence. I would demand corpus delicti.
The evidence would be the witness's testimony.
Okay,
Now,
well then who's the victim? Can you please describe the victim to me, officer?
That's irrelevant. And
No, it is not irrelevant.
Sir.
In order for a crime to happen, there has to be a victim.
No, sir. Oftentimes
okay.
there are victimless crimes.
No, that is a farce. That is something you all have come up with in order to propagate a whole bunch of money grabbing shit on the public, and I'm not going to put up with it. I was driving through your state trying to make money and improve your community, and I got hassled by this person that has not even qualified to be an American citizen.
Sir, she was a certified trained law enforcement officer working for the State Highway Patrol. As part of her duties,
she has 6 months of training.
Mister, you're gonna have to slow down a little bit, please.
Okay, she has 6 months of training. A hairdresser has more. You laugh. You think it's funny, but you want me to prove this stuff?
Sir, you're not proving anything to me that's relevant.
Okay, so please, the whole basis of everything you're doing here is the Constitution. Is that not true?
That is not true. We are enforcing state statutes today, and you're accused of violating those.
Okay, and the Constitution is?
As I said before, for a driving offense, you do not have a constitutional right to drive. Driving is a privilege. There are laws passed that deal with the privilege to drive. One of those is speeding. Another is that you have to have a valid license to operate a motor vehicle.
Okay, but this officer can't tell me the angle of deflection, which could result in up to 2 miles an hour. I could be going 2 miles an hour faster than what she thought I was.
Those are all factors the court has to consider.
Oh.
First, the court has to consider whether there was a reasonable, articulable suspicion to stop your vehicle.
Okay, and I'm saying it wasn't.
Well,
So
you get a chance to make your argument, but not at this stage of the proceedings. Right now, this is the stage where you ask her questions.
Okay, then can you tell me the elements of a crime?
Sir, that's not relevant at this point.
Yes, it is.
You are charged with...
Okay, again, then I want to know who the victim is. My doctor would like to know who the victim is so I can make sure that the injuries are not life-threatening.
Sir, this is a crime that does not have a victim.
Then it is not a crime. It is a policy, and I'm not obliged to uphold it.
That is your opinion. Policies are passed into statute to regulate the safety of the public and the driving safety to the public.
Okay, but when you're using subjective things to pull people over so you can search their cars, that has nothing to do with safety. That has everything to do with you making money. There's multiple news online showing policing for profit, and that is exactly what just happened here. I had out-of-state plates, and she pulled me over because she wanted to search my car. That's why she said on stand that she pulls people out of their car on a regular basis for traffic infractions. That is not normal.
Sir, I'm not going to testify for the officer, but the court...
Sounds like you are, sir.
No, the court has seen on other occasions that's their policy for safety. First, ask the person out of their vehicle to come back. Her testimony was it's not required, but they like the person to exit the vehicle. That would appear to be a safety consideration for the officer's safety.
But is it a requirement?
I don't know what their policy is concerning that. She asked you to exit.
But is it
and
a
you
requirement?
agreed.
Do I have to get out of my vehicle? Just so I know for future reference, so I don't run into this problem again.
I do not believe there's any law that requires you to exit the vehicle. But that's irrelevant for this proceeding because you agreed to exit the vehicle.
I did not. I was put under duress until these officers, there was force surrounding my vehicle, which this officer just testified that she was the one that initiated the paraphernalia, which is not true.
All right. Do you have further questions about the testimony she has provided so far today?
I mean, if you're going to keep shooting down, you're going to let her be unqualified to even make a legal conclusion, but tell her she's allowed to, then, I mean, what else should I ask her?
That is up to you, because I can't tell you the questions to ask.
Officer, could you, you're going to object to this one too, but it's completely relevant, because I'm from a different state, and I shouldn't need to know your laws. They're not my problem. I was just coming through here to do something for your community. So, but this is your law, and I want to know if she knows it, so it would prove to me that I'm supposed to know all your laws.
Was there a question in there?
I want to ask her a question, but I know you're going to object to it.
I don't object. I
I'm
just make
prefacing-
rulings on the objections. But ask a question.
How many Native Americans walking down the street in South Dakota does it take before I can declare a war party and shoot at them?
I object, that's totally irrelevant. Any question of speed or possession of drug paraphernalia.
And that objection is sustained because it's irrelevant to our proceedings today.
It is not irrelevant. I am from Colorado. I don't need to know all your laws. She lives here and is a law enforcement officer. She needs to know all of your laws, right?
We are only dealing with the
Oh,
specific
my God,
violations that you're charged with today. That's
Yeah.
all that's relevant.
Okay, and what was the humidity on that day?
Objection.
How is that irrelevant?
Trooper, you can attempt to answer if you know.
I don't know.
You didn't make a note anywhere?
No.
Object is continuing to follow that.
Do you-
Let me ask
It's,
Nancy.
What?
The objection's overruled. He can try to ask his next question.
What is your training? What is the extent of your training on the whatever device you were using?
Are you referring to the radar device?
Sure, whichever one, LiDAR or whatever it was.
Whatever's required for law enforcement to be trained in, I was trained in.
You do not have any advanced training at all in 3 years. You don't. When was the last time you took that training course? In academy?
No.
When was the last time you took it?
I would have to refer to my training records to give you a specific date.
And did you bring those?
No.
And what kind of, what was the gun that you used to specify my speed in order to initiate a stop? Which one did you use? I don't know. I don't know which one State Patrol uses here. I didn't look it up.
Like,
Your radar gun, your radar device, can you specify which type it was if you know?
specifically, I can't give you, I mean, it's a radar gun. It's every state trooper has.
So you don't know whether it's a laser or a radar?
A LiDAR gun is a radar, is a laser, I believe, is what you're referring to, and I did not use that.
Okay. So you don't know the difference?
Object, Your Honor, she'd already testified she didn't use it, so it's irrelevant if she knows any difference between them.
That objection is sustained. She testified as to which one I believe she used.
What was the specific model?
Same objection there as it's already been asked.
No, she did not answer what the specific model was that she used.
The objection is overruled. If you recall the specific model of the radar gun you used, please tell us.
I believe the brand is called Stalker something. It's just the brand, but
You don't have a model number? You just know the brand? They all come with a model number, right?
I do not have the model number of the radar detector that I used memorized.
So, how is it calibrated, and when is it calibrated?
Law enforcement officers do not calibrate them. They test them.
Okay, and that still doesn't answer my question.
I do not calibrate.
I didn't ask that.
radar.
That was not the question I asked.
Trooper, do you know when it was calibrated? That's the question he asked.
No.
You did answer one part. You said you don't do it, right? But when was the last time it was calibrated?
I can't tell you off the top of my head.
Okay. And when's the last time you tested it?
The
Before that
radars,
day? That day?
yes,
And how do you test it?
with tuning forks.
And is it one tuning fork, multiple tuning forks?
There are 2 tuning forks that it's tested with.
Okay. And did you note if it was out of it? I know you get a 1 plus or minus from the 65. Did you note whether it was high or low that day?
If there is a discrepancy or a malfunction during the test, then it's not used.
Okay. But what if it's within the threshold of the 1 plus or minus from 65 on, and the second tuning fork is 100, right? Something like that?
You know your tuning forks, what they are test at?
65 and 45.
Okay. So do you note whether it is 64 and 44 or 66 and 46? Do you note that somewhere?
If there's any discrepancies in the test that shows that it's not working properly, it's not used.
Okay, but is there or is there not a 1 plus or minus threshold that it's acceptable?
She's our objection, she's already testified multiple times. It either meets the standard or it's not used.
The objection is overruled. His question is there a threshold of error plus or minus 1 mile per hour from your tuning forks that you are still allowed to proceed and use those forks and the radar device?
No, they give the same reading. However, for a stop, there could be a 1 mile an hour grace. So you could be traveling 1 mile an hour faster. You could be traveling 1 mile an hour slower.
Okay. And your testimony is that it was 85 miles an hour. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did you not, you didn't tell the defendant anything different when you walked up to his window? Is that correct?
Different from, different, what do you mean?
You didn't inflate that number when you walked up to the defendant's window out there on the road?
No.
You did not?
No.
Okay. And I would specifically like you to describe the item which you saw inside of the glove box to initiate the search.
I would have to refer to the evidence log for that.
Wouldn't your report have been better? Wouldn't your report have noted where you found it, what it looked like, where it was, what condition it was in?
Object, Your Honor, now he's asking the witness to speculate.
Well, at this point, the objection's overruled. Trooper, you don't have any logs or reports available to refer to today, is that correct?
Correct.
okay?
Okay.
So you're testifying from your memory and recollection, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. He asked you to describe, to the best you can, the item that you observed in the glove compartment. Can you try to do that? And if you don't recall, you don't recall.
I don't recall what specific item was in the glove compartment, just that there was an item, there were several items found in the vehicle.
And if did you notice any other items or any other habits that the defendant had while we were on the side of the road and you were searching his vehicle for 45 minutes?
What do you mean by habits?
I mean, did he drink a bunch of coffee? Or did he smoke some cigarettes? Or did you notice any of those things?
I don't know. I can't say. I don't.
I guess where I'm going with it is if the defendant had pipe tobacco in his car and you observed a pipe and you can't describe it, and the black residue inside of it could have been nicotine, did you test it before you did a search?
So, I think what you're asking me is if I see something that I believe to be paraphernalia, that would be reasonable suspicion enough for me to be able to investigate further.
Okay, but innocuous behavior is not suspicious enough. It doesn't meet the requirement. It's innocuous for me to smoke a pipe and have pipe tobacco, is it not?
Paraphernalia is only paraphernalia if it's used, if there are illegal substances used in it.
Okay, so through your observations through the window, did you come to any other conclusions, or do you have any other reason other than seeing a pipe that might be innocuous to initiate a search? Any other observations?
Your Honor, I'd object to this. That's been asked and answered I don't know how many times already.
How so, sir?
Just wait, Mr. Lyons. The objection's overruled. The question was, and I think you've answered, but let's clarify. The item you observed in the glove compartment, which you can't recall specifically, was that the reason then you initiated the search of the rest of the vehicle? What you saw in the glove compartment?
Yes.
Okay, and just that alone, is that right? No smells, no observation of leafy green crumbles on the floor, nothing else?
Oh, there were other observations made.
Okay. What were those observations?
So we call that the totality of circumstances. So there are other factors that we take into consideration, which would be normal or abnormal behavior.
Okay. And what was this abnormal behavior you were speaking of?
So the item that I saw in the glove compartment is consistent with other items of paraphernalia. So that was reasonable suspicion to investigate further. Now, the other observations I made, I came up to the vehicle and I explained to you that I was stopping you and I was going to be issuing you a warning. I asked for documentation and you were uncooperative at that point, and in my experience, that is not typical of somebody that is just maybe speeding or following too closely.
Okay. And in this interchange, was there any threats or violent behavior or anything else that could lead you to believe, besides someone standing up for their rights, make you believe that that was not reasonable? Was there anything done besides standing up for the defendant standing up for his rights, to make you believe that it was suspicious? Anything else? Any smells? Anything else? You didn't observe anything beyond weird behavior and a pipe that could be for pipe tobacco?
So when I came back to my vehicle to ask for or request backup, you blared your music really loud, and just in my experience, it was escalating to what could be potentially violent. Is that what you're asking me?
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, sure. But I would ask, what law is, or what crime is playing your music too loud while waiting for the police?
It's not a crime. It's just an observation. It's a indication to me that
How so?
things are escalating.
How so? How is that? How so? How does that make you feel that that's escalating the situation?
Because it's not typical behavior for somebody to not comply when you're going to be writing them a warning. I wanted you to get on your way faster than you probably wanted to. But at that point, I have a job to do, and I needed to
Okay.
do
Yeah,
that job.
I don't need you to testify. I just need you to answer questions. That's all. Wall. You initiated the traffic stop alone. Is that correct?
Correct.
And how many officers showed up to assist you once you perceived a threat?
Your Honor, I'd object to this question. It's totally irrelevant to the two charges here.
No, that objection is sustained. Let's focus on the charges that are pending.
Oh,
'cause
no.
The number of officers that arrived is not
Fruit of
relevant
the
to
poison
charges.
tree.
Sorry.
It's fruit of the poison tree. This all stems from the initiation of force by her. So it is a completely, totally relevant to what we're talking about. If four guys with guns and army gear didn't show up at my truck, I wouldn't have got out. No way. No way. That's duress.
I understand what you're saying. Move on to your next question, please.
Okay. Please name all of the officers that showed up to your call.
No, the witness is not required to answer that.
Why?
I said move on. It's irrelevant how many officers were there or who they were. I understand your argument that you wouldn't have gotten out of the vehicle if other officers wouldn't have been there. But that's not relevant to the two charges we're having a trial on today. Let's focus on the two charges. You asked very relevant questions about the speeding. You asked very relevant questions about the observations of any paraphernalia. Those are good questions. But let's focus on the two things that you're charged with.
Yes, sir. Can you please describe the vehicle that you say I was tailgate? Is that the term for it, or is that, what's the law? Following too closely?
Following too close.
Yeah. Can you please describe the vehicle that I was following too closely?
It was a camper trailer. That's all I can describe to you.
Okay. Well, that's a really big spectrum. A camper trailer ranges from the kind you put in the back of a truck to the giant land barges that they tow around with fifth wheels. So can you please describe it to me?
Your Honor, I'd object to that line. That's totally irrelevant.
How is it
Too close
irrelevant?
Too close, regardless of what it is.
And too close is subjective.
All right. First, the objection sustained. if you wanna ask questions about how close is too close, or those type of things, that would be relevant. But more specifics on which type of vehicle, when we've already learned she doesn't have a report and doesn't have all those details, is not something that's gonna be helpful. If you wanna ask a question about the following too close, you're
Okay.
welcome to do that.
Okay, when you made this observation, where were you?
In the crossover?
You were in the crossover?
Yes.
That's your statement, that I was following him at 85 miles an hour too closely for how long?
Jack, the length of time is not relevant either.
No, it's overruled. She can attempt to answer if she can recall.
Specific time frame, I can't tell you. I can't testify to a specific seconds or minutes or anything like that.
This is why a report would be really relevant right now.
But Mr. Lyons,
I know, I understand. I
I
apologize.
agree with you. Trooper, do you recall how long of a distance on the roadway you observed what you believe to be Mr. Lyons' vehicle traveling behind the other vehicle you were observing?
About 1.5 car lengths.
Excuse me, I'd ask for clarification. Is that how far behind he was or how long you observed it?
How far behind he was.
The second part of the court's inquiry in response to what Mr. Lyons is trying to ask is, you made that observation. Over how long of a distance did you see that, and how far away were they from you when you first made that observation?
I would say, and this is approximate, I can't give a specific feet or anything like that, but approximately a half mile was how long that the following too close took place. And I didn't observe that until he was approximately, and this is approximate, right just before he passed me in the crossover.
Oh, okay. No, I got a perfect question for this. This is pretty awesome. So, why didn't you pull the RV over for speeding, if that be the case?
So the RV wasn't speeding, or the camper wasn't speeding, but if there's somebody that's going a certain speed in front of a person and that person is traveling at a speed that's faster than that person, they're going to, get closer to that person. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. I mean, how long do you think it takes for someone to overcome 200 feet when they're going 85 and the speed limit that you have announced that I've done? How long do you think it takes them to overcome 200 feet when someone's doing 80 miles an hour?
I object, Your Honor, that's irrelevant also.
Incorrect.
Overruled, she can attempt to answer. I guess the question would be more, over the period of time you observed those vehicles, did you observe Mr. Lyons' vehicle close the distance between him and the camper trailer?
Yes. Is that what you're asking?
I'm not sure exactly what
I
he's
don't-
asking.
I'm asking if you're saying that it was a half a mile, which is 1,000 something feet, right? And I'm traveling behind this guy too closely for a half a mile. Wouldn't I have run into him in less than 200 feet? If I was within the following too closely, which your guideline is 2-second rule, right?
Mr. Lyons, I don't believe that was her testimony, but let's clarify.
Her testimony was that I followed him too closely for a half a mile.
No, her testimony was she observed you for a half mile. The court recalls, her testimony was she didn't observe you traveling too closely until right as you got by her area at the crossover. Trooper, is that what you had testified to?
Yes.
Okay. Then did the defendant continue to follow too closely?
After passing the crossover?
Yes. After your observation.
Yes.
And how is that possible?
I would object, Your Honor. That question takes us nowhere.
Does it not? I mean, it seems like a relevant question to me. If you make an observation at this point that I am following too closely, and then it takes you time to initiate the stop, correct?
Correct.
If I just kept going and he's doing 80 and I'm doing 85, wouldn't I smash into the back of him?
Same objection, Your Honor. There's no testimony as to what the speed was
Which
after
we're-
they went.
All right. The objections overrule, I believe, and Mr. Lyons, you can correct me, but I believe the question you're trying to ask is after her initial observation where you and the other vehicle passed her location, Trooper, did that vehicle continue to travel too closely, or what did you observe after they passed your location? And I'll follow up with, and did you observe same speeds or did something change?
So the speed that I observed was at the time was long before the crossover. So, what speed you were going a half mile past the crossover and what speed the camper trailer was going, I can't testify to that.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm asking you is if you saw me close the distance within a half a mile and right before you made your observation, I was too close, according to you, then you say I continued to follow him. But if I was doing 85 miles an hour and he was doing 80 and I was too close, how could I continue to follow him?
Just wait. It's a relevant question. Trooper, did Mr. Lyons' vehicle continue to travel at 85